Welcome back to another UCL Fantasy video and podcast. This will be the best wildcard team for Matchday 13, the first leg of the quarterfinals. You can see the clean sheet odds on screen. Barcelona, Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain have a 40% chance of keeping a clean sheet, with Arsenal in fourth having a 29% chance. Then you've got Real Madrid, Inter Milan, Aston Villa and Borussia Dortmund completing the list of the quarterfinalists, and all the graphics you need, the stats, injury updates will be covered across all my content. The best limitless team is already out on the channel. My team selection is headed your way, and a deadline stream on Tuesday to answer all your questions, which a lot will be team specific, but they will also encompass a lot of different scenarios with the captaincy, substitutions, and much more. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream for both UCL Fantasy and FPL. And check all the links in the description, which includes my X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, the Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. And I gifted 10 memberships in the recent deadline stream for FPL, and keep your eyes peeled every single month so you have a chance of winning a membership there. But let's also talk about the goal scorer odds before delving into the best 15-man squad on the wildcard chip. And there are some interesting names here, with the likes of Robert Lewandowski in top spot once again, Dembele, Ramos, Rafinha, Kane, Yamal, Barcola, Kvaratskhelia, Ferran Torres, Mbappe, Olmo, Musiala, Guirassy, Lautaro Martinez, and you've also got Kang In Lee. But some of these options are injured or at least doubtful. That includes Kang In Lee. Musiala is going to be out for the next 8 weeks, as covered in my Limitless Team video, so bear that in mind as well. And all these stats are taken by fantasyfootballpundit.com, and also, these projections are based on the assumption that these players will start, and that won't be the case for every single player you see on screen. But it's always good to have these in mind, and they can inform your decisions with your transfers, your wildcard or limitless inclusions, and much more. But let's get straight into the best wildcard squad for Matchday 13. My overall team value is 107.8 million, and of course we had that 5 million increase going into the knockout playoff rounds quite a while ago now, but that will help a lot in terms of building a very competitive squad which can compete with the limitless teams as well. And that's why I always advise people to use the limitless as early as possible, because as you advance into this competition you have fewer options, some expensive players are eliminated, and you also have the weaker teams also being out of the equation, so you have even more kind of balanced matchups and lower ceilings for these players. And even without a limitless, you can still compete and have a very competitive squad. So that's kind of my thinking there. And with the wildcard chip, it is a team dependent tool, and when you have to use it, it's probably kind of based solely on your kind of situation. But I still think using it now is a good time to use it. And if you watch my team selection video, you will see my plans with the chip, because I have in my back pocket, I've got 5 free transfers at my disposal. Yet I'm still very tempted to play the chip and optimize my team, not just for the first leg of the quarterfinals, but also for the rest of the competition. According to several reports in Spain, there are a few late calls for Carlo Ancelotti to make with the Real Madrid starting lineup. One of them is going to be the starting goalkeeper between Courtois and Lunin, and it was actually the third choice goalkeeper who started against Valencia in their 2-1 defeat on Saturday. And Carlo Ancelotti said they didn't want to risk Lunin, with Courtois remaining doubtful, but the Belgian shot stopper did train on Saturday, and another reliable journalist in Spain indicated that Courtois will start against Arsenal. But we will see the lineups before the deadline, because remember, it is at kickoff at 8 PM UK time on the Tuesday, so we will see if Courtois starts or not. And if he does, he is my favourite goalkeeper on the Tuesday, not just for the quarterfinals but also in the long term. And it also balances very well with our second choice goalkeeper. They wouldn't clash until a potential Champions League final, which would be great to see. It would be an El Clasico if that was the case, with Wojciech Szczesny being on the other side of the bracket and playing on the Wednesday. He is my favourite Wednesday option, of course. That's why he does feature. But you've also got Donnarumma if you want to cover PSG defensively from that perspective. But Szczesny offers tremendous value at 4 million. He has only featured in 2 UCL Fantasy games in terms of when he's actually scored points, and he was actually added to this game. But he is a good option. He offers good value, and Barcelona keeping more clean sheets in the last couple of months, and Szczesny has stepped up with his performances big time. So this is my favourite combination of goalkeepers. Manuel Neuer, if he's fit, would be my favourite in isolation for the first leg of the quarterfinals, as discussed in my best limitless team video. David Raya is decent. Jan Sommer is always a great option, and he's another one to consider from the Tuesday. But if all it goes well and Courtois is available, I would go for the Belgian and Szczesny as your 2 goalkeepers. The highest scoring defender in UCL Fantasy is Hakimi, which isn't a big surprise. He's also played in more games with the knockout playoff rounds as Paris Saint-Germain struggled in the league phase, but they have been incredible since late November. Only one defeat across all competitions in that time frame, and they have won Ligue 1 already with so many games to spare, and they're able to rotate now in the French division and fully focus on the Champions League. Luis Enrique is doing a great job, and Hakimi has 5 assists in the Champions League, which is only bettered by Joshua Kimmich across all players. I'd also advocate a defensive double up in PSG, but I completely understand if you aren't really too confident about it because Aston Villa have won 7 consecutive games across all competitions and they're showing incredible form, so you might want to reconsider that. But William Bacho at 5 million can offer you ball recovery, so even if PSG concede, he can deliver 4 to 5 points, and that would be a very solid score at this stage of the competition, especially for a defender. And the same goes for Kim Min-jae, although probably not to the same extent as William Bacho, as I think Bayern Munich are decimated by injuries. Manuel Neuer might not be fit in time for that crucial clash against Inter Milan, and you might even argue that the Italians have a bit of an advantage in terms of fully fit players, and they could have the edge over both legs over Bayern Munich, but I'd still have a slight preference for the Bavarians, especially in the first leg. So I think having a balance of both teams is probably the best way to go, and having one Inter Milan player at least, and maybe not going gung-ho on Bayern Munich. And that's why in this team, I'm also going to go for an Inter Milan defender, and Bastoni is the safest option. You can also go for Sommer in goal, and then go for Rudiger to have your Real Madrid coverage defensively, but I think with Dumfries, for example, he would have been my preference. He's going to be out for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And from Arsenal, you've got David Raya in goal, William Saliba, and a few other options like Jurriën Timber. But Gabriel was probably the standout, and he's out for the rest of the season due to a hamstring problem. And that's not the first one that Arsenal have suffered this season. So I think Bastoni is just a safe set and forget option. He won't be that fancy, but he can get the odd ball recovery point, and he's got a bit of goal for it. He's one of the best centre-backs in world football, and I think having one Inter Milan defender or Jan Sommer in goal is highly advisable, even up against Bayern Munich, who are one of the best attacks and teams in world football. But let's now complete this defensive line with Jules Koundé, and that means another defensive double-up. The same goes for Paris Saint-Germain here, but there are fewer ones compared to the limitless squad I showed you, which also had one for Bayern Munich, for example, and it was a bit of a different structure. But you also have to think about the long term with the wildcard and not trying to book in too many transfers in future match days. So I think this gives you a solid platform, not just for the quarterfinals, but also for the rest of the competition. Ousmane Dembele has scored the most goals in 2025, establishing himself as one of the best midfielders in UCL Fantasy, and I think he's a great option here. Even if you're backing Paris Saint-Germain to lose across both legs and you think Aston Villa can go far into the semi-finals or the final, I'd still recommend having Dembele and Hakimi. Then you could add your third or fourth PSG player with the likes of Bacho, Nuno Mendes and Donnarumma, but I think with the midfielders like Kvaratskhelia and Barcola, they pale in comparison to Ousmane Dembele, so I'd highly recommend them if possible. And from Aston Villa, it's Morgan Rogers who stands out from the minutes perspective. He also scored against Nottingham Forest in that 2-1 victory, and he got 2 assists against Brighton, and Villa are showing real consistency right now. So that game could be slightly tougher than you would have expected a couple of weeks ago, but PSG have 1 defeat since late November, and they are winning virtually every single game, which has led to that Ligue 1 title very early on. Jude Bellingham is the best Real Madrid midfielder by some distance, and for Matchday 13 only, you could definitely argue Saka is more appealing, but over both legs, Real Madrid are still the favourites for me to go through, and Bellingham is a man of big moments, so in future rounds, should Real Madrid reach the semi-finals, I think Bellingham can also score the winning goal and have something to say in those big moments. So that's why Bellingham does make it. It also saves a transfer potentially later down the line. But if you are backing Arsenal, at least in the first leg, Bukayo Saka is by far the best midfielder you can go for. The likes of Trossard and Merino are decent options, with the Spaniard playing up front and doing a solid job there out of position. But it's still Saka or nothing for me in terms of that Arsenal attack, and that will remain the case until the end of the season. I'd also advocate a Barcelona midfield double-up, with Rafinha being a template pick, but there's a good reason for it. And when he had very low ownership in the summer, I was recommending him. I think it was around 5% ownership at the time, and everyone was going for Yamal instead. But Rafinha has proven to be the better UCL Fantasy asset. But why not go for both of them at the same time? Those that did in Matchday 12 would have benefited from that big time. And I think having this structure from now until the end of the tournament, or when Barcelona are knocked out, is the way to go. the only team I double up on in the midfield is Barcelona, and these two definitely stand out like a sore thumb. And the last option is Michael Olise. Whilst you have Joshua Kimmich, who has 6 assists in the Champions League, the most of any player, I think Olise is the one Bayern Munich midfielder you really want to have. And if you had to pick one attacker overall, it's between Harry Kane or Olise, but why not go for both of them, you could say. That is still a possibility. The only downside is they're facing one of the best defences and teams in Europe in Inter Milan, so that could be cagier than one would expect. But when you look at the other side of that matchup, with Inter Milan midfielders, Çalhanoğlu's on penalties and he's a decent option, but I think Olise is even better. So I really like this midfield 5. You might want to go for Saka as well. And on the limitless, having him and Bellingham is a real possibility. But with future rounds in mind, not just the quarterfinals, but also the semi-finals and the Champions League final, I think these players have a great chance of reaching the next round and also delivering the goods. Pick your poison between Kylian Mbappe or Vinicius Jr., or just your great UCL Fantasy forward who will deliver a lot of points, but I think it's a very difficult one to call, and in some match days Vinicius will come out on top, and in others it'll be Kylian Mbappe. The Brazilian has 6 more points right now, but that could change by the end of the quarterfinal stage. And in recent matches across all competitions, basically since December, Mbappe has scored way more goals than Vinicius, and he has gained more Player of the Match awards. Vinicius missed a penalty against Valencia, so despite his great performances overall, like in the Copa del Rey, for example, there are some occasions where Vinicius has kind of lacked in those big moments, especially with the penalties, but I think against Arsenal, Vinicius is a great shout and you can't underestimate him. The same goes for Kylian Mbappe, but I would lean towards the Frenchman right now, and he could also take penalty duties, which was hinted at by Carlo Ancelotti in his press conference. I'd also go for Harry Kane, who is an expert penalty taker. There is no reason for him to kind of shift them aside to somebody else. And with Musiala out for the next 8 weeks, that's a massive blow to Bayern Munich, and that means one less player who can create chances for Harry Kane, but he can still score penalties, score from open play, and he's linking up very well with Michael Olise, and the other wingers like Leroy Sané is stepping up in recent matches, scoring in consecutive games. That could be another Bayern Munich attacker you want to consider. But if I'm choosing between Harry Kane or the Inter Milan strikers, it's going to be Harry Kane all day long, especially in the first leg of the quarterfinals with Bayern Munich being at home. But the final forward is Robert Lewandowski facing his former club Borussia Dortmund. And whilst I'm leaving out Guirassy, who is the highest scoring UCL Fantasy forward right now, I just think Borussia Dortmund will fall to Barcelona, and so you're saving a transfer by going for Lewandowski and going all in on the Catalans in this way. You've got a double up with Yamal and Rafinha in the midfield, Lewandowski, which forms a triple up overall in the attack, and a defensive double up with Koundé and Szczesny. I think that could work very well in the long term. I expect Barcelona to reach the Champions League final. We'll see how that goes in the end, but against Borussia Dortmund, I would say Barcelona probably have the best chance of advancing to the next round. Now, it's worth noting that these videos, the Best Limitless and Wildcard squads, are recorded on Sunday morning, so if there are any more updates, they will be covered in my team selection video and also the deadline stream on Tuesday, where I'll answer all your questions. But at the moment, let's talk about the captaincy with the information we have right now. On the Tuesday, I would favour Mbappe from the players you see on screen, and if you have Saka on the Limitless, for example, or you choose to go for him, I think that's a decent differential captaincy shout. He has a great home record, especially in the Champions League, and he scored upon his return against Fulham to give Arsenal the victory there off the bench, and he was also subbed on in the second half against Everton, so his minutes are building up. They're not rushing him back just yet, but he should start against Real Madrid. I would favour Mbappe though overall, and for the Wednesday, I think Rafinha, Lewandowski and Dembele is the podium of the best Wednesday captains in order, and the likes of Yamal are decent alternatives, but Yamal is very template, and I'd rather go for the likes of Rafinha, if I'm being completely honest. We can't discount Harry Kane on the Tuesday as well, and even with defenders, they can surprise you. Hakimi would be my favourite to captain amongst all of those players, but I definitely wouldn't be looking at Bastoni or Kim Min-jae as a captain, to be quite honest with you, despite the ball recovery potential that both players possess. So it's a very solid 50-man squad. It does say I'm 2.5 million over budget, but that's for someone who is starting UCL Fantasy right now. With my squad value, I can afford this, and I've got a little bit left in the bank. And some alternatives you can consider to maybe upgrade this team a little bit, if you have the extra funds, is to do Courtois to Sommer and have that Inter Milan defensive coverage, and then go from Bastoni to Antonio Rudiger, but that is kind of very niche and it's not really a huge upgrade, so to speak. You're basically replacing the Real Madrid goalkeeper with a defender, and the same goes for Inter Milan, basically. I think Jan Sommer is still arguably the best goalkeeper in UCL Fantasy overall, but Bayern Munich is going to be a very tough game, so let's wait and see how all these games pan out. Let me know your predictions in the comment section down below and reach out across all social media platforms. But that is the captaincy sorted, the 15-man squad, and there are other players to consider across all of these positions like Saliba, Saka, as mentioned before. We have discussed them as we went through every single position there, and I want to see what you think in terms of building a Matchday 13 wildcard. Do you think it probably is better than doing it in Matchday 14? And how are you going to tackle the upcoming deadline with only 5 free transfers? It's still a decent amount, to be fair, and it can help you really bolster your squad with those eliminated players, get them out of the way, and also navigate the suspensions and injury concerns very well. We have thousands of members in the UCL Fantasy Mini League. Be sure to join if you haven't done so already. The league code is cCaFxb, and there's an auto-join link in the description to make it even easier to become a part of the biggest mini league in UCL Fantasy. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream for both UCL Fantasy and FPL. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Spotify, UCL Fantasy, as I mentioned before, can all be found in the description. I'll see you very soon for more UCL Fantasy and FPL content, and on Tuesday there'll be another deadline stream where I answer all of your questions in the best possible way.